when I came out of college, the first job I had, I made $27,000 annually. And maybe a handful of years after that, I was roommates with this guy in New York, and he was starting a company. We went out to the family house in New Hampshire on an island or something crazy, and we came up with some harebrained scheme, and it was called BizPhone, BIZPHONE, or FONE or something. And I invested $10,000 into that company. Mm-hmm. And I lost all my money. But keep in mind, I was making at that time probably less than 40 grand a month. But I still made.
But you still did
took
it.
the risk, yeah,
mm-hmm.
to invest in this company just because I have a high tolerance for risk. So I did that on the heels of that one. That one failed. On the heels of that one, the same guy, his family's a biotech family. His father ran a publicly traded biotech company. And he started another company, and I gave him 100 grand this time. And that turned into $1.5 million, right? So I took that money and flipped it into Zappo. So mm-hmm. that's kind of how it started. The point, though, is that you don't have to have a lot of money. You just have to have some money. So here's the practical part. If you are interested in doing something similar to what I've done, you have to have a track record. You kind of have to know. People need to know that you know what you're doing. And having it can be viewed as an excuse if you suggest that you don't have any money to do it. Well, you have some money, and then you sacrifice in other areas, and maybe you take 10 grand or 20 or 30 grand and write $5,000 checks into companies, and then as those companies grow and hopefully sell, now you can go to the world and say, hey, I have a track record. I've actually invested in companies that have done well and sold, and that becomes your track record. You can take that on the road and raise money, which is how I did it. Mm-hmm. On a different scale, but it's how I did it.
Yeah. So when Angela was out here, we were talking about sort of differences between men and women, risk taking, and so on and so forth. How did you develop this high tolerance for risk?
Yeah. By the way, let me just say this. You guys did a phenomenal job up here, and Angela is a pioneer in mm-hmm. Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. What she has done for black folks in the Valley is something that is hard to quantify, because a lot of people that she's touched haven't told their stories or how they got to where they are, but they've got there because of what Angela has done. And the fact that she's been brave enough to do all those things, given her background, it makes her that special. So we've all been lucky and blessed to have Angela in our lives, because she's affecting all of us. Frankly, she's done this before anyone else did it. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, CNN had the foresight to report on that. So mm-hmm. so we're all fortunate and lucky and better for it because of what Angela has done.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. But so what made you say, okay, I'm willing, I'm making 40 grand, but I'm willing to make this risky investment.
Dude, I'm greedy.
Okay.
I'd like money. Mm-hmm. And you can go out and I wasn't, I played football in high school and I was pretty good, but I knew I wasn't going to make my wealth that way. And I'm not what's called an operator. I'm not an entrepreneur. I can't go out and start a company and be a good operator, be a good CEO and hire people and all that comes with it, right? So I know, I'm self-aware, I get that that's not my deal. So much so that I actually went out and started a company and realized very quickly that wasn't my thing.
Okay.
But I did know that I wanted to create a lot of wealth, and one way I felt to do that was to invest mm-hmm. And take big bets. And I took very big bets.
How'd you learn? I mean, did you have a mentor? Did somebody show you how to do this?
Yeah, so I had a lot of mentors, but nobody showed me how to invest. So I just, I read up a little bit, and I did things that were probably, just like Angela was suggesting earlier, I didn't think about it. I didn't try to figure out, do I invest in it at this kind of valuation and these kind of terms? I didn't even know what that stuff meant. I mean, I had an MBA, it was in finance, smart enough to get it, but I wasn't an investor in private companies. So I just I knew I had a $50,000 check, and I trusted this guy, Tony, who had just, made $300 million, and I gave him a check. And I didn't look at the docs, I didn't figure it out. And I probably, in retrospect now, I would have probably not invested because the terms were not favorable. Mm-hmm. But you can't get caught up in that. Like, you just go, I just win. I just knew I wanted to. I knew this guy was going to do something. He'd already done it.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to work anymore, but he did it. So,
how many Black-owned venture capital firms in the Valley?
there are a handful now. There are, 3 or 4. Now, so let me qualify this. There are some funds that are what's called impact funds, which means that they invest in companies that are, investing only in Black or brown or women folks, or they are investing in clean tech or environment and saving the environment or creating jobs. Those are impact funds. My fund is not an impact fund. It is purely to create returns for my investors. So there are now, today, there are maybe 3 or 4. When I started, people have said that I was the only one, right, when I first did it. So it only makes everything better the more that there are like me. So it's not a competitive thing, it's a collaborative thing. I know all of them, who've done it. And the reason why I say 3 or 4 because there's a couple that are raising, they're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
They're a handful, not a lot, but that's 3 or 4 out of, hundreds, maybe thousands of funds in the Valley. Yeah.
So having said that, you're talking about a very small percentage of that, right? And so I interviewed a guy on my podcast, Randall Pinkett. And he wrote a book called Black Faces in White Places. Sounds like that's your situation. So what's some of the advantages and or disadvantages of being in this game in that kind of environment?
The advantage is that Angela hit on it as well. I see deals that a lot of the majority of VC firms won't see because, for instance, Black folk may feel more comfortable with me. They or they may have an idea that is specific to our people that I might understand differently than a VC that doesn't look like me. So the advantage is that I can invest in these companies with a more confident, check writing skill because I kind of have a sensibility and a knowledge base that would help me assess those kind of risks differently than another investor, which is why, in fact, there are a handful of investors in my fund who invested in my fund because they want that particular expertise.
That kind of perspective. And so while we're on that topic, this is good. I think, is the image up?
No.
I hope the image up is up of your portfolio there. And so this is a very critical part. There's one that I'd like to hone in on. Real quick, with audience from the crowd, just give me a quick round of applause if you've ever made a mistake that you wish you could go back and take back. Just give me okay. So we all make mistakes, right? Career, life, relationship, all of these sorts of things. But you found an entrepreneur who had made, that's a mistake that some people would consider pretty big, and you decided to invest in them.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So there's a company called Pigeonly, and the founder's name is Frederick Brown, and I met Frederick through Angela's accelerator. And Fred's story is that when, most of I would say that most of the people that I invest in maybe have gone to Harvard or Stanford. They're in the Valley, or they dropped out, these top schools, or CMU. And it's true, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal out here. But this cat spent 4 years in the penitentiary. He was in jail for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and he came out and he was doing he was hustling, and he had a couple of other businesses, and he went into prison because he was selling selling marijuana. But his approach to it was different. He said, listen, I don't know how much detail people need, he saw some inefficiencies in the way it was being sold, and he stepped in and used his mind, and he made it more efficient. So much so that the feds watched him for a couple years and put him in jail for doing it. He came out of prison and started this company, and I met with him, and I remember telling him that I gave him brutal feedback that I didn't like this, and that, and he should go back and fix a few things. And until then, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And he told me, he says, I'm gonna get you to invest in my company. And you hear that, I'm like, yeah, that's right on, man.
Right.
And he went back and did all those things that we talked about, and came back and has now a phenomenal company that helps inmates communicate with their loved ones on the outside. And so I was the first professional money into the company. There are other investors in it, but I was the first professional money into it. And the reason why is because what happens is when people start, what people don't realize is that doing a startup it's difficult. It's really hard, right? And so I try to assess whether or not when that when that deal doesn't happen, when the partnership that you've been planning for a long time doesn't go through, and you hate your co-founder, and you want to just go home and quit and go get a job at Google and make $250,000 a year, what are you going to do? Are you going to stick around? So what obstacles in your life have you gotten over that would that would convince me that you can do that? One. Secondly, what are you working on? Is what you are working on something such that when things do get tough, are you going to continue to work on it? Right. So this guy fit the bill. He's working. He knows he's a perfect candidate for, he's a domain expert, so to speak, because he spent a lot of time in prison, so he knows kind of the ins and outs of it. He knows the pain points of prison. So, and then all the pain that he went through while inside, it makes any difficulty on the outside, because you don't get a little bit of money,
right?
Small. So he was a perfect candidate. We gave him money. We continue to give him money. His company is doing well. He's based in Vegas, and I would do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared of. So I know who goes to jail.
Right.
Right. We all. I think we all. I got some. People in jail.
We all.
So we know who they are. We know what kind of people they are, oftentimes, and so I knew that he was he was going to be a great entrepreneur. Right. And he's proven to be very, a good entrepreneur.
So there really are second chances out there.
No question. Mm-hmm. And a lot of bigger funds have given him money as well. Yeah. As a result.
After you did.
Yes. Yeah.
Round of applause for doing that. I mean, that's definitely a big deal.